Prince Louis is clearly a delightful character. He's full of energy, he's full of beans. He clearly finds these photo opportunities very...
A sudden announcement from Buckingham Palace has shaken the nation, bringing unexpected attention to Prince Louis and Prince George. After weeks of quiet concern surrounding the royal household, officials have confirmed a development that has left many struggling to understand what it means for the young brothers. This update isn't routine or minor. It marks a serious turning point in their lives. So what exactly pushed the palace to speak out so urgently? A palace statement, like no other. The words from Buckingham Palace lit up screens across the nation, each syllable carrying a weight rarely seen in royal statements. It wasn't about protocol, engagements, or ceremonial appearances. It was about Prince George and Prince Louis, the young princes whose laughter once brought warmth to millions. Now, the palace acknowledged something deeply personal, quietly serious, and heartbreakingly real. Even the senior staff were caught off guard. There were no whispers, no preliminary alerts. The official statement landed suddenly. The family appreciates the public's kindness as they navigate a private matter concerning Prince George and Prince Louis. For seasoned royal correspondents, the tone was startling. It conveyed emotion, gravity, and care in a way Buckingham rarely permits. The choice of words hinted at challenges far beyond ordinary childhood struggles, leaving the public to wonder what had prompted such an unusually candid note. Speculation spread almost instantly. Some insiders suggested the turbulence of the past year, the king's health concerns, Princess Catherine's long recovery, and the relentless glare of the media had created pressures quietly felt by even the youngest members of the royal family. Teachers at Lambrook received discreet calls, upcoming family appearances were delayed, and staff moved with a new caution, aware that the smallest misstep could draw unwanted attention. The announcement revealed the monarchy's rare willingness to acknowledge vulnerability, humanizing a family often seen only through pomp and ceremony. Yet, it also highlighted the care with which royal decisions are made behind the scenes. The palace's statement, carefully worded, was both protective and measured, signaling that this was a matter of privacy, not scandal. Observers noted the contrast with the royal public image. Prince William, increasingly steady and commanding in his role as heir, appeared unshaken, reinforcing the monarchy's focus on continuity and calm authority. Meanwhile, whispers suggested Prince Harry's recent travels and movements had drawn renewed attention, though no official connection was confirmed. The palace remained silent on specifics, letting the statement's gravity speak for itself. Across Britain, households paused to absorb the news. Phones lit up with messages of concern, televisions hummed with coverage, and social media buzzed with speculation. For a moment, the nation glimpsed a royal family as any other, facing private trials in the midst of public life. Prince George and Prince Louis, normally symbols of innocence and joy, had become a quiet reminder. Even within the gilded walls of Buckingham Palace, life can be fragile, and every heartbeat matters. In acknowledging this, the monarchy balanced duty with humanity, sending a message both subtle and profound. The palace had reminded the world that, beyond titles, crowns, and ceremonies, the family remains a family, and even princes are vulnerable. But even as the palace emphasized family over titles, a single question lingered. What was Prince William's next move in the unusually still courtyard of Kensington Palace? The moment. The palace fell silent. Nobody expected the courtyard at Kensington Palace to grow so still, yet the silence felt almost intentional, as if the wind itself paused to listen. Prince William stepped forward slowly, not as the future king, not as the polished royal the public sees at engagements, but as a father carrying a weight he could no longer hide. The cameras aimed at him seemed to fade into the background. What mattered in that moment was the story he was finally ready to share. He didn't open with formal greetings or royal protocol. Instead, William took a breath so heavy it seemed to carry months of sleepless nights, and then, in a quiet voice that betrayed the calm mask he often wears, he addressed the rumors that had been swirling through the press since early 2024. This time, it wasn't about duty, it wasn't about protocol, it was about his children, Prince George and Prince Louis, and the private storm their family had been trying to manage behind tightly closed doors. What William revealed next made even the seasoned reporters lower their pens. He spoke about the emotional toll Catherine's long recovery had taken on their home. The palace had confirmed her condition earlier that year, but no headline had prepared the world for what her absence meant to her sons. According to William, it was Louis who struggled the earliest, yet George soon began carrying burdens far beyond his young age. The two boys, always close, had responded differently, one reacting with confusion, the other with quiet fear. He described evenings when Louis would crawl into their room without a word, eyes glossy with questions he didn't know how to ask. Days when George, normally steady and protective of his siblings, seemed to withdraw into himself, trying to be strong while silently wondering why everything felt unstable. William admitted he hadn't recognized the early signs. Royal duties, medical updates, and the pressures of preparing for a new era under King Charles had blurred together until he felt he was functioning on instinct, not awareness. One moment, he said, changed everything. Louis had whispered a question late one night, one that pierced through William's defenses. "Is Mommy going to go away like Grandpa?" The reference to King Charles' diagnosis was innocent, but it stopped William cold. He realized then that both boys were carrying a fear far heavier than their years allowed, and George, who overheard, had quietly left the room to comfort his brother in the hallway. A sight, William said, he will never forget. He spoke, too, of Princess Charlotte's attempts to shield her brothers. The normally composed young princess had been overheard crying privately to her nanny, overwhelmed by the roles she was trying to play: sister, helper, little guardian. The responsibility wasn't hers, yet she felt it anyway. William's confession wasn't rehearsed, it wasn't polished, it was human. He asked the media for compassion, not as a royal issuing a directive, but as a parent trying to protect his children from the unrelenting spotlight. "They're just kids," he said softly. "Please allow them time and space to heal." For a moment, even the cameras seemed to hesitate. The press would later debate his words, discuss their deeper implications, and speculate whether this emotional openness hinted at larger tensions inside the monarchy. But in that courtyard, during those few unforgettable minutes, the only story that mattered was the honest vulnerability of a father standing between the world and his children. And somewhere within the palace walls, the echoes of that confession were felt by every member of the family, especially the young princes whose lives were forever shaped by the silence William chose to break. Was the silence William finally broke hiding more than family secrets? What was unfolding inside Adelaide Cottage that left Prince Louis and Prince George caught in unseen turmoil? The hidden battles of Prince Louis and Prince George. The quiet halls of Adelaide Cottage carried a tension no royal smile could disguise. Inside, Prince Louis and Prince George were slipping into an invisible storm, a world of confusion and silent fear that only those closest to them could sense. Charlotte, ever the protective sister, had tried to anchor her youngest brother. Mature beyond her years, she absorbed the hushed whispers and worried glances, holding together a fragile balance that even the adults struggled to maintain. But even her resilience had limits, and the truth spilled before it could be contained. Catherine, still recovering herself, was shattered by what she heard. Louis, once a whirlwind of laughter and curiosity, had begun retreating into himself. Breakfast passed uneaten, garden games abandoned, toys untouched. George, normally boisterous and confident, watched his brother's energy dim and felt the same weight pressing upon him. The children's joy, once so natural, was being replaced by a heavy silence. The tipping point arrived during a classroom activity. A peer's innocent question. "Is your mom still sick?" pierced Louis's fragile shell. The boy shut down completely, eyes brimming with confusion and fear. That evening, he refused to eat, refused to laugh, and by morning, he refused to return to school. It was a quiet but urgent alarm for William and Catherine, who realized that shielding their children from the world had not been enough. Behind closed doors, aides and psychological consultants were summoned. A decision was made to withdraw both Louis and George from Lamuk temporarily, an unconventional step in royal circles, done with no media fanfare. The world, still expecting smiling portraits and choreographed appearances, remained unaware. Behind palace walls, a different reality unfolded, one of fragility, of two young princes being allowed to simply exist without expectation. Adelaide Cottage became a sanctuary, a space where they could heal without scrutiny. Catherine, despite her own limits, devoted hours to reading, listening, and simply being present. Her presence became a lifeline for Louis, a tether to stability amid uncertainty. And then, a surprising figure entered the scene, Princess Anne. Known for her strength and unwavering resolve, she quietly vowed to support her grandsons. Her calm authority brought structure to the household and offered both Louis and George a role model in resilience. With Anne's guidance, the boys began to navigate their emotions, learning that even royal children could face vulnerability and emerge stronger. In those private halls, the monarchy revealed a side seldom seen by the public. Care unbound by ceremony, protection that required courage, and the recognition that even princes are not immune to life's quiet battles. For Louis and George, the path to healing had begun, slow, guarded, but real. A lesson that even in a world of titles and tradition, the heart comes first. What happened when observers looked closer at Adelaide Cottage? And what surprising truth did they uncover about the quiet struggle of Prince Louis and Prince George? How Prince Louis and Prince George found their way back. The tension in Adelaide Cottage had reached a breaking point. Prince Louis and Prince George, usually inseparable and full of mischief, were retreating into silence, their laughter replaced by quiet corners and unanswered questions. Charlotte had tried her best, stepping in as the anchor for her younger brother, shielding him from hushed conversations and the worried glances adults exchanged when they thought the children weren't listening. But even her resolve was cracking, and the truth of Louis's despair leaked before anyone could prepare for it. Catherine, already fragile from her own recent challenges, was struck by the sight of Louis curling up alone, refusing breakfast, ignoring garden games he once adored George. Sensing the tension and Louis's growing withdrawal, became quietly protective, but his youthful energy couldn't fill the gaps left by an invisible storm. The tipping point arrived one seemingly ordinary morning when a casual comment at school, "Is your mom still sick?" sent Louis spiraling. By that evening, he refused to speak, eat, or return to his classroom. William, exhausted and unsure, privately confided in Princess Anne. In the quiet of a hallway away from palace eyes, he admitted he no longer knew how to reach his son. Anne listened, calm but perceptive, and made a suggestion that startled even him. "Send him to me," she said simply. "Let him work with his hands. Listen to the birds, not the whispers." Within days, Louis and George were quietly relocated to Anne's country estate, far from cameras, reporters, and the pressures of public life. Mornings were no longer dictated by royal obligations, lessons, or choreographed appearances. Instead, they began with simple routines. Watering plants, clearing leaves, tending gardens. Anne worked beside them, telling stories not of crowns or scandals, but of horses, childhood mischief, and lessons learned in patience and trust. Slowly, the boys began to open up. Louis, once guarded and withdrawn, smiled and laughed again. George, observing his brother, regained his own spark. Horseback riding became a turning point. Anne taught Louis and George that riding was not for spectacle, but for trust, control, and confidence. Louis, hesitant at first, found momentum in each stride, wind brushing away the fear that had clung to him. Anne's steady presence created a lifeline, not through therapy or palace rules, but through connection, responsibility, and simplicity. Behind the scenes, Anne became a confidant for William and Catherine. "He's got Diana's fire," she told Catherine one afternoon. "He just needs direction." The words struck deeply. Diana, too, had once been misunderstood, and now her grandson was rediscovering his light under the care of someone who understood the weight of royal silence. As Louis and George's world began to stabilize, the palace outside continued its quiet, calculated rhythm. Royal life went on, unpredictable yet enduring. But for the first time in months, the youngest heirs had found peace, not through titles or appearances, but through patience, love, and the steady guidance of the Princess Royal. But when palace insiders examined the Princess Royal's guidance, what surprising effect did it have on the unfolding tensions surrounding Prince Louis's hidden public appearances? The hidden struggle of Prince Louis and Prince George. Tension gripped the palace like a thick fog. Whispered conversations gave way to hurried murmurs as aides hurried through the corridors, carrying news that could no longer stay hidden. Somewhere inside Buckingham Palace, a confidential memo had been leaked, hinting at plans to keep Prince Louis out of the public eye. A strategy supposedly meant to protect him, but phrased in a way that chilled even the most seasoned staff. Phrases like low visibility approach and stagger appearances painted a picture of control, not care. The memo suggested the young prince's presence in public should be limited, as though his very existence threatened the carefully curated image of royalty. Prince George, too, felt the tremors. His younger brother's silence unsettled him, and George's normally playful energy was shadowed by confusion and quiet anxiety. Together, the boys became mirrors of a family struggling to balance the delicate dance between privacy and public duty. Charlotte, always the anchor, had taken it upon herself to shield Louis from the whispers and tense glances exchanged when adults thought no child was listening. She offered a steadiness beyond her years, trying to protect her younger brother from the weight of the palace's unspoken worries. Yet even her resolve began to waver, the burden of fear pressing down until it could no longer be contained. William was furious. Sources say he confronted key palace advisors behind closed doors, demanding to know who had approved such a cold, clinical directive without consulting him or Catherine. To see his son discussed as a liability was intolerable. Catherine's reaction, however, was even sharper. She reportedly called the memo inhumane, accusing senior staff of hiding behind their titles to avoid responsibility for a woman renowned for her composure. Her anger sent shockwaves through palace ranks, reverberating through corridors that had long relied on silence and discretion to maintain appearances. Then came Princess Anne. Calm, decisive, and unyielding, she stepped into the storm. The Princess Royal, who had quietly been helping Louis rediscover joy and confidence, confronted those responsible for the memo. "You do not contain children," she reportedly said. "You protect them." Her words, firm and unwavering, silenced the room. For the first time in weeks, it felt as though the machinery of the monarchy had paused, allowing the emotional well-being of the children to take precedence over rigid protocol. For Louis and George, it marked a turning point. Outside palace walls, curiosity had already begun to swell. Journalists noticed the boys' absence from family events and public appearances. Hashtags trended. Questions went unanswered, fueling speculation. Under mounting pressure, the palace finally acted. A statement emerged, candid and unprecedented. Both princes were receiving emotional recovery support under the care of professionals and their family. The words emotional recovery sent shockwaves across media platforms. They acknowledged what parents worldwide already know. No title, no castle, no privilege can shield a child from the quiet ache of emotional distress. Accompanying the statement was a handwritten note from Catherine. "He is strong but young, and we are learning to navigate this as a family." Simple words, yet they humanize the ordeal entirely. Social media erupted with support, with parents sharing their own children's struggles and mental health charities applauding the transparency. For the first time, the public could glimpse the fragility that exists behind the royal facade. Within palace walls, aides quietly admitted that the truth, though painful, was far better than silence. Buckingham Palace had allowed the world to witness not perfection, but humanity, and in doing so, had reshaped the way the monarchy protects and nurtures its youngest heirs. In that rare transparency, Louis and George were no longer just princes. They were children first, and the palace had finally recognized that some battles are fought not in public, but in the quiet, unseen corners of home. And when the palace silence grew, what unsettling truths emerged about the hidden struggles of Prince Louis and Prince George? And how far would Charlotte go to keep them grounded? Prince Louis and Prince George's quiet battle. Inside Adelaide Cottage, a heavy stillness hung over the normally lively household. Prince Louis and Prince George, once inseparable in play and laughter, had begun retreating into silence, their energy replaced by long hours of solitude and quiet unease. Charlotte, stepping beyond her years, tried to act as Louis's anchor, shielding him from the tension she sensed among the adults. She whispered jokes, shared stories, and held his hand during bedtime. But even her protective efforts couldn't stop the cracks forming in her brother's spirit. Eventually, the truth pierced through the careful barriers, reaching Catherine in a moment of quiet panic. Catherine's heart ached at the realization. Louis, once full of life, now sat at breakfast in near silence, leaving his plate untouched. George, ever perceptive, felt the growing disconnect as well, sensing the invisible weight pressing on his younger brother. For William and Catherine, the truth was stark. Their attempts to shield their children from the public eye, from cameras and headlines, had not been enough. Hidden wounds were forming, quietly but relentlessly, behind smiles and carefully choreographed appearances. Even casual moments, laughter at breakfast, playful chatter on the stairs, had been replaced by lingering silences and worried glances exchanged between adults who feared being overheard. The tipping point came unexpectedly. An innocent question in class, "Is your mom still sick?" shattered Louis's fragile composure. He withdrew completely, refusing to speak or eat, and William and Catherine made the immediate decision to withdraw him from Lamock. No public statements, no media spin, only quiet, urgent action to protect their children. Homeschooling began under close supervision, focusing not on academic achievement but on emotional safety and healing. For the first time in modern royal history, a child was allowed to simply heal without expectation or ceremony. George, too, received extra support, with structured play and private tutoring, helping him navigate his own anxieties while witnessing his younger brother's struggles. Afternoons were devoted to art therapy, giving Louis a safe space to paint storms and chaos he couldn't yet describe in words. Nature walks became daily rituals, offering peace in birdsong and wildflowers instead of flashing cameras and scheduled engagements. Slowly, their household transformed into a haven of quiet care. Public perception began to shift, applauding William and Catherine for courage and openness, drawing comparisons to Princess Diana, who had once broken silence to share her own struggles with mental health. This choice redefined strength in the monarchy, not through rigid composure or polished public appearances, but through honesty, vulnerability, and care. Yet calm was short-lived. Across the Atlantic, Prince Harry broke his silence in a pointed media interview, warning of the consequences of burying royal pain. Meghan added, "Protecting children should always come before protecting an institution's image." A private act of care meant to shield Louis and George suddenly became a spark for public debate. William, furious, reportedly exclaimed, "He hasn't been here for any of this," viewing the intrusion as betrayal. Catherine focused on her sons, refusing to allow external chaos to derail their fragile progress. Inside the palace, opinions were divided. Some argued Harry and Meghan had forced a long-overdue reckoning about the emotional toll of royal life. For decades, trauma had been swept beneath gilded carpets and disguised as discipline. For Louis and George, however, the narrative was different. One of recovery, resilience, and a childhood reclaimed from the pressures of expectation. Even amid whispers and speculation, the Wales family quietly reshaped how royal children could be protected, their emotional well-being prioritized over ceremonial duty or public image, setting a precedent few had imagined possible. When duty and public image collided, what unexpected ripple did it create within Adelaide Cottage, quietly shaping the hidden world of Prince Louis and Prince George? The garden of quiet strength. Silence had settled over the palace, but beneath it, tension throbbed louder than any headline. Within Adelaide Cottage, days weighed heavily with unspoken fears. Prince Louis and Prince George, normally inseparable in mischief, were withdrawing into a quiet world of their own. The bright laughter that once danced through the halls like sunlight had faded, leaving only muted echoes behind. Long hours were spent alone in their rooms, staring out at gardens they no longer played in, tracing the familiar paths with eyes that seemed distant and distracted. Charlotte, ever the protective sister, tried to anchor her younger brother, attempting to absorb the unspoken anxieties that drifted through the household. But even her steadfastness had limits, and soon the cracks in the family's private world became impossible to ignore. Catherine, herself still navigating recovery from recent struggles, watched her children with growing concern. Breakfasts passed untouched, midday meals went by unnoticed, and smiles became rare. The subtle signs of emotional distress, fidgeting hands, quiet withdrawal, long silences, became impossible to ignore. George, sensing his brother's isolation, began retreating slightly too, creating a quiet tension that the adults could neither explain nor remedy. The tipping point arrived one ordinary school day. A seemingly innocent question about their mother's health during a classroom activity sent Louis spiraling. That evening, he refused to speak, refused to eat, and made clear he would not return to school the next day. William and Catherine faced an impossible choice: uphold appearances and tradition or protect the fragile hearts of their children. After careful consideration, a silent decision was made. Louis and George would withdraw from public schooling, guided instead by private tutors and specialists. Palace aides coordinated a discreet plan designed to prioritize emotional safety over royal protocol. The move was unconventional, almost unprecedented in modern royal history, yet for William and Catherine, there was no alternative. Their children's well-being came first. Every moment was carefully structured. long walks through the palace gardens, quiet afternoons filled with books and stories, and time spent simply being together, reconnecting with one another beyond the glare of expectation. Then came the moment that captured the world's attention in a way no press release could. A single photograph, quietly shared by a trusted family friend, showed Louis and George in the palace garden, crouched beside their mother planting flowers. No crowns, no ceremony, no grand gestures, just raw, unfiltered humanity. Louis's face, once shadowed with fear, now glimmered with trust and curiosity. George, too, seemed lighter, sharing in the task alongside his mother and brother. Within that quiet frame, something profound unfolded: resilience. The image went viral almost instantly, not as a spectacle, but as a symbol of recovery and hope. Public reaction shifted overnight. Support poured in, not only for the young princes, but for William and Catherine's decision to prioritize heart over headlines. Mental health organizations reported unprecedented engagement. Parents shared their own stories, and campaigns emerged urging greater attention to children's emotional well-being. Behind palace walls, conversations turned toward the future. Could Louis and George one day champion mental health initiatives, not out of duty, but from lived experience? Could their story reshape how royal childhoods were protected and nurtured? For a monarchy often criticized for its rigidity, the Wales family had taken a quiet but bold step towards something real. In one sun-dappled garden, under soft morning light, two boys had reclaimed their laughter, teaching the world a quiet lesson. Even behind gilded walls, healing is possible, and courage can bloom in the smallest of acts. The image was more than a photograph. It was a promise that resilience, care, and love could redefine legacy, one shared moment at a time. So, what do you think could have prompted Buckingham Palace to reveal such a shocking update on Prince Louis and Prince George? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like and comment.